Hello and welcome to another episode of the Female Property Expert podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that affects almost everyone at some point in their lives, and that's the decision of whether they buy or rent a home. It's a huge financial decision, and conventional wisdom has always told us that buying a home is the cornerstone of financial security. But is it really the best path for everyone? I'm going to unpack the realities of home ownership, mortgages, and explore some alternative thinking. So let's start with the myth of the mortgage as an investment first. Let's talk about the traditional mortgage on a home. Most people are taught from quite a young age that buying a home or a house with a mortgage is an investment. However, it's crucial to understand that residential mortgages on your primary residence isn't really an investment in the traditional sense. Why? Because it does not generate you an income. Instead, it actually takes money out of your pocket each month in the form of mortgage payments, maintenance costs, taxes, insurances, and all sorts. Now, when you take on a mortgage, you're essentially using debt to purchase the asset. The idea is that the asset will appreciate over time. And by the time you're ready to sell, you will have built up equity and the home will be worth more than what you originally paid for it. However, this appreciation is not guaranteed, and costs associated with owning the home can often far outweigh the benefits of this potential appreciation in brackets. And all isn't as it seems, which I'm going to explain a little bit more in a minute. But first, I need you to understand the difference between debt and equity. Let's break down what I mean by debt and equity. So, debt, simply put, is the money that you owe to lenders or financial institutions. So, when you're taking out a mortgage to buy a property, you are in debt for the amount that you borrowed until you fully pay it back. So, here's an example. When you purchase a property with a mortgage, you are borrowing money from the lender, and this is considered debt because you owe the lender the principal amount of money you've borrowed plus interest until that loan is paid back. And then next, the good old credit cards. So using credit cards to finance property-related expenses and other purchases creates debt. And credit card debt typically carries a much higher interest rate. Then we have personal loans. So if you take out a personal loan to cover property renovations or anything else, to be fair, buy a car, whatever it might be, that amount becomes debt. And that is what's taking money out of your pocket every single month. Debt does that to you. Now, looking at equity, equity is the proportion of your property that you actually own. So it's the value of the property minus any debts or liabilities that are associated with it. Let me give you an example. So let's say your house is valued 250,000 and you have an outstanding debt, which is a mortgage, of 150,000. So basically you take your 250,000, which is the house value, you minus it from the 150,000, which is the outstanding debt, and that's going to leave you with £100,000. So in effect, you have £100,000 in equity, which represents your kind of ownership stake in that property. So next, I'm going to explain a little bit about good debt and bad debt, because there is such thing as good debt and bad debt, and people seem to fall into the trap of bad debt all the time. So good debt is typically considered an investment that has the potential to increase in value over time or to generate you an income. In the context of property, okay, so if you borrow to buy a rental property, this can be considered good debt. If the rental income covers the mortgage, the expenses, the property appreciates in value over time, and you also get to take some profit out off the top. You might also find there's property development loans. So, for instance, taking out a loan to develop a property for the resale or rental purposes can be extremely profitable if the project generates a return on the initial investment. So, this as well is classed as good debt because it's putting money back into your pocket. Now, bad debt is usually associated with borrowing for non appreciating assets or items that do not generate you an income. So, consumer debt, which is using credit cards for personal expenses that do not contribute to your wealth building or income generation, are classed as bad debt. High interest loans. So these are, for instance, loans with exorbitant interest rates, such as, your payday loans, and they can quickly become unmanageable and they are hugely detrimental to your financial health. Now, understanding the differences between debt and equity is crucial for a property investor. Debt can be an extremely powerful tool when used wisely for investment, but that investment has to generate an income or appreciate in value. On the other hand, accumulating bad debt can only lead one way, and that's to financial hardship. Now, let's return to mortgages because I was talking about that a minute ago. Now, imagine as you pay down your mortgage, your equity in your property grows. Now, this is seen as a positive aspect for a property ownership, or so it seems. However, it's essential to understand that equity is not liquid cash, it's potential wealth that is kind of tied up in bricks and mortar. But what I'm going to explain to you next will make you completely rethink home ownership, or at least it should do, because you very rarely make money on your own home. It's a burden, not an asset. So, owning a home with a mortgage can often mean that you're paying nearly double the price tag of that home over 20 to 30 years due to the interest. Actually, yes, you did hear me right. Okay. That's nearly double. So if you purchased a home for £200,000 and the interest rate was 4% and it was over a 30-year mortgage, you would end up paying close to £350,000 by the time you pay it off. That is a substantial amount of money spent in just interest. £150,000 in interest. So even if your house has increased in value, in fact, when you look at how much you've paid out of your own pocket over all these years in interest, in reality, it will never really make a profit. Then we have what I call the life script. This is where you leave school, you get a job, you start a family, you get a mortgage, and eventually you reach retirement age. Let's unpick this a little bit, shall we? Let's start with the job. Many of us are taught that securing a stable PAYE job is the first step towards financial security. But let's be honest, with the ever-changing job market, the uncertain economic conditions, job stability is no longer a guarantee. In today's big economy, where contract work and temporary positions are almost everywhere, the idea of a lifelong career with one employer is becoming less and less realistic. Next comes the mortgage, and often it's considered like a milestone of adulthood and, you've achieved financial success. However, let's be honest, for the average person earning around, £30,000 a year, committing to a mortgage can be financially suffocating. A mortgage ties up a significant proportion of your income. Sometimes it's as high as 50 or 60%, depending on obviously the property price and the term of the loan. And a residential mortgage is, it's a long-term debt. It's a long-term commitment. Often people span it over 25 or 30 years. And this means that for the next few decades, a substantial proportion of your income is earmarked to go to the lender, leaving you little room for investment opportunity or actually any financial flexibility at all. Even if you just want to go on holiday, not work for 6 months, you can't. Let's not forget about interest payments either. So, over the lifetime of your mortgage, you could end up paying almost double the original loan in just interest alone. That's money that you could have used to build wealth by investing and to create a better situation, a better life situation that you want. Maybe you want to own a business. Maybe you would like to go traveling for 3 years. You can't because you have been given the life script. And in times of kind of economic downturn or property market corrections, as we refer to them, there's a risk of negative equity. So this basically means you're owning more on you're owing more on your mortgage than the property is actually worth. The property value has gone down, but your mortgage is still up here. And this traps you into a huge financial burden. You actually can't get out of it. So I'm sounding very negative, aren't I? So with a large chunk of your income tied up to mortgage payments, what I'm trying to say is there's very little room for financial maneuverability. What happens if the unexpected expense happens? You lose your job. You have a change in financial circumstance. It's so quick how your dream of home ownership turns into this big nightmare. Every pound spent on mortgage payments is a pound that could have been invested elsewhere for potentially much higher returns, giving you money back. Property ownership, while an asset, if it puts money into your pocket like an investment, it's also on the flip side a burden if it's taking money out of your pocket. You can't easily access, the equity that you've built up unless you sell or refinance. And yeah, you've guessed it. If you refinance, it leads to even more debt. And then you're paying those high interest fees. And if I'm honest, it might not even be possible if you're in a pinch point and, we've got an economic downturn or COVID, might not even be able to negotiate refinancing. So consider this. Instead of sinking all of your hard-earned money into a property, what if you diversified your investments? What if you rented and you then invested in properties, in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or even that you started your own small business that could, let's be honest, offer greater returns and, liquidity ultimately. And if I think in some areas, I used to live in Buckinghamshire, in some areas like Buckinghamshire, property prices have skyrocketed beyond the reach of the average earner, which means that they're taking on either massive mortgages or they're having to move further away from where they want to be. And that creates its own set of challenges and its own set of additional costs. So I ask you, rethink the life script. The traditional life script of go to school, get a job, have a family, get a mortgage, and, retirement, in reality might not be the optimal path for everyone, especially in today's economic landscape. The world has changed so much over the last 40 to 50 years. You can start investing money safely, and a mortgage can be a significant financial burden, tying up large chunks of income that could be better utilized for investments to actually generate you cash, to build long-term wealth, to build your pension pot as such. So instead of blindly following the script that has been given, look at your individual financial goals. Look at your risk tolerance. Look at what investment opportunities are out there. Consider alternatives to sinking all your money into just one property that takes out a huge chunk of your money and keeps you on that hamster wheel. Explore options that offer both returns and liquidity. Remember that I suppose the script is not set in stone. It's okay to question the norm and seek alternative paths to financial freedom. It's only you saying, I must stay doing this. It's what I've got to do. And actually, I'm sure there's a part of you that knows that what you're doing isn't going to lead to huge financial success. The reality is that for many, the life script path may not lead to financial freedom at all. And actually, in their lifetime of debt and limited financial growth, when they want to retire, they can't because they can't afford to, which is what we're seeing in our elderly generation now. So, what's the alternative? Consider flexibility in renting. You can invest your money saved from not having the mortgage that pulls out all of that money out of your pocket and actually invest it into a vehicle that generates you an income. Now, it's not necessarily property, it could be stocks, it could be bonds, but property investment is often the route that people go, where properties you invest in bring in maybe a rental income, but also they increase in value over time, which adds to your kind of wealth pot. You have more money as you get older. And unlike your primary residence, which basically drains your wealth pot completely. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Think about what financial security means and looks like to you. It's important that you challenge the norms and consider honestly whether sinking a large proportion of your capital into a non-income generating asset is truly your best financial investment or decision, especially when you're paying massive amounts in interest. And there are many different paths to financial stability and wealth creation. You just need to be open to it and start exploring. So thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I hope this discussion helps you think kind of more critically about your own financial decisions. And I suppose I'm hoping it encourages you to explore all the different options available to you, so you know that there are different options. Now, I'm Emma Morby, and this is the Female Property Expert podcast. Remember, knowledge is power, and in the world of finance and property, it is your best tool for crafting a life of freedom and stability. Until next time, stay curious and take charge of your financial future. Happy investing.